of all, let me introduce this, that we are doing an interview, kind of a casual conversation about what life was like for me as a child, my diagnosis, and so forth. These are my wonderful parents, Carol Doerr and Jerry Doerr, the best parents anybody could ever ask for. So I was born in Lava, Wyoming on May 10th, 1974, to these goodly parents, their first child, the favorite first child, because they had so many first children. So at about what age did you notice that your little girl wasn't hearing very good? And how did that all come to be?
I'd say it was between 18 months and 2 to 2.5, right through that period of time. We had a friend that came over and babysat, and she would holler at you to come and eat or to do something, and you wouldn't turn around. And she would holler and stomp and try to get anything she could think of to get you to turn around, and you didn't. And she said, Carol and Jerry, I think something's wrong with Candace's hearing. And that was the first we ever thought about it. And then from then on, we tried different things to get it into our minds and feelings that it was true.
Well, and also on a Saturday after work, or when it was not working, you were watching cartoons or something. We had a small screen TV, and I thought you were too close, and the house was very long, and you were at one side, we were in the kitchen, and I hollered at you and you didn't move, and I hollered again, you didn't move, and I walked forward and I stomped on the floor, which had a basement, so it vibrated, and you felt that, and you turned around and you couldn't. I said, could you not hear me? And you shook your head no. And so we, at that point also, we started working some more during the day and covering our lips, because you were phenomenal. You were learning to read lips at such an early age that nobody caught that, what was going on.
What did you do?
Well, you were really an active child. You would catch on. I was very demonstrative and had a lot of facial expressions, and we have early recordings of you listening and talking to, well, listening to me or noticing what I did, and you would pick up on all those things. You were very alert and very attentive to whatever we did. So you were a very easy child, very happy.
There in Sheridan, where we lived, there was, what kind of doctor? Ear, nose, and throat doctor there. And so he checked you out and said you needed tubes in your ears. So we had the tubes inserted.
Do you remember that test?
I remember
me sitting on the sound booth or something.
I remember.
Was that
Well,
the first test?
I was in the sound booth with you and holding you on my lap, and he would do sounds, and it was everything I could not to jump up or make a movement for the sounds, and you wouldn't hear any of them. And I was shocked. I was shocked. My heart, every time you didn't move to those sounds, was like an arrow pierced into my heart. And when he came out and said you had a moderate hearing loss, I immediately thought you were deaf. I mean, I had no idea the differences and the different levels there were. I had nothing, no concept of moderate, severe, profound. I didn't have any concept of that. I just knew my precious baby couldn't hear. And it broke my heart. It just devastated me. I just remember walking out of that office crying, just crying, because my precious, darling, beautiful little girl couldn't hear.
Imagine.
He did another set because the first set of tubes came out wrong. And so he did another set, of tubes, put them into your ear. But there
What were they
was,
hoping to accomplish with the tubes?
well, they thought that might help your hearing loss and might relieve, you were having pain,
Pressure.
I was
Pressure.
having pain.
pain and pressure.
Had I complained about this before?
When we went over the mountain to go visit your
Yeah.
grandparents, you hurt big time,
I remember
especially
that.
coming down the mountain.
And this happened before you knew I couldn't hear?
No,
Or
that was after. That was after.
after the ear tubes were put in?
Well, the ear tubes were put in, but you still had pressure.
I remember that drive was always awful. Going back and forth over the mountain between Sheridan and Lava visiting my grandparents. And yes, excruciating pain. So you thought that had something to do with my hearing loss?
Yeah, we were told that had something to do with your hearing loss. At least that's what we thought. We thought if we put the tubes in your ears, that you'd be able to hear. I mean, we were not educated,
Okay.
and we just were trying anything to get you to be able to hear regular.
It was vacation, or we went specifically for that, but he had lined up an appointment with this doctor. He checked you all out, and he didn't know what was wrong, and he said you need to find someone closer to home so that you can see them on a regular basis. We found this doctor. It was actually a whole team of ear, nose, and throat doctors in Denver. And this guy was so good, I remember them telling us he worked on the professional basketball teams.
Well, I think that had to do with Primary Children's Hospital, because Primary Children's was, March DeVore put us onto that. And
No,
how-
tell us who Mark DeVore is.
Marge DeVore was helping you to, she would come to the house and she would help me to help you to learn how to listen.
And where is she from?
She's from Casper Deaf School.
Okay.
And she became a good friend and a good resource person. And she put us onto the March of Dimes, I believe, and we would go there to Denver through the March of Dimes help, and they would help pay for it and get you with the audiologist there in Denver with their team of experts.
I've never heard of the March of Dimes being involved. What do they do?
They gave us some money to travel back and forth and stay overnight.
Okay.
We depended on it. We didn't have the money to help you to do
So
that.
we went to Denver. We met with this doctor, and I got another set of ear tubes at the Denver Children's Hospital.
Yes,
Okay.
We went, every month or every other month?
every other month.
Every other month we would go there, and every time they would test you in his office. Then we go to the Children's Hospital, they would test you there, and then he would come back and tell us the results. And almost every time it was 5 to 10 decibels more loss.
Decibels?
Yes,
Okay. Are we continuing to lose?
continuing to
And
lose.
they would do all different kinds of tests, all different kinds, and I was in that booth with you every time, every minute of it, and it got louder and louder, and it was just painful.
So you are watching a little girl who is about 2.5 going on 3.
3, 4,
Continually,
5 to lose your
well,
hearing.
at the beginning phase, you are watching a little girl continually losing 5 to 10 decibels
a time.
every other month.
Right.
So in January of 1977, supposedly I have been told that within the space of 2 weeks I went from a moderate severe to a profound hearing loss. You are watching a little girl go deaf. So at that point, what did you decide to do?
We were always praying for you, but we decided to fast and pray and ask our church to fast and pray with us to stop the hearing loss. And you were given a special blessing, and we had a one-day 24-hour fast. and your hearing loss stopped at about a 95 decibel hearing loss.
It was a day or two later that we actually went back to Denver. You had your test at the doctor's office again, went to the children's hospital, went back to the doctor's, had more tests. Did we go back to the hospital a second time?
Yes.
And then we thought, boy, something's up. Sorry. Long time ago. That's all from me. Still like it was yesterday. So we get back to the doctor's office and we knew something was different.
And he said, I don't see any more loss. He said, I see that it's holding. It's holding now. He said, I don't know what you did, but her hearing loss has stopped.
He said, I can't explain it. And I said, well, we can, as the tears were flowing.
It meant a lot. It meant a lot. We didn't know how little was there, and he pulled out charts, and he said, this is where she's gone. She's gone from moderate to severe to profound. She's still at profound, but it's not all the way. She's still got some that the hearing aids will help.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can't imagine our hearts that we knew that at least you had some hearing to go on with life with.
Well, and what was the cause of it also was the inner ear hair fibers were disintegrating
In the cochlea.
in the cochlea. And there was no reason for it. They did so many tests. And there was no fevers, no disease, nothing. The blood was okay. Everything was fine. It's just they were disappearing.
I actually did a term paper in college about hearing loss, and they say that 30% of our hearing loss is unexplainable. And I fell in that category of just unexplainable. And so, like you said, there was a lot of history and things, no illnesses or sicknesses that was just happening. So I was 3.5 when this special fast and blessing and prayers stopped me from losing any more hearing, and I've been pretty much stabilized between 95 to 100 decibels.
Well, you were actually older than that. You were older than 3.5.
According to the history that you wrote, it was in January of 1977 when that happened.
Really?
Yes.
Because I remember it different.
So, when during the time frame, when did you start talking about body aids, hearing aids, those kind of things? Yes, I had ear tubes, but that all that was done. Did you immediately put me in a preschool? Did you have any guidance, any direction from anybody? Or were you just kind of moseying along?
Marge was coming to our home monthly, if I remember right.
Yes.
So who referred you to Marge? How did you find out about Marge at the Wyoming Deaf School?
I don't know. I don't know if putting you into preschool and if they contacted the deaf school or what happened.
Okay, so Marge would come up to Sheridan and do what?
She would teach me or give me guidelines in how to help you to listen. And so she would talk with you and play with you, and I would watch, and then she would have me make notebooks, and we would cut pictures according to sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd put CHs on one page and Gs on one page, and Js, those were your hardest sounds, and S's to try to get you to move your lips, because I wanted you in a hearing world. I didn't want you in the deaf school, and kept fighting for that, because we wanted you to have as normal as the life as you possibly could.
Well, when did the talk of body aids or hearing aids come about?
They came about with all the audiologists. The audiologist because you were so little, the bra straps that came over that hooked onto your
Harness.
the harness that hooked onto your hearing aids and up. We had to change your hearing aids, your molds constantly because you were constantly squeaking and growing. And so we would have to do that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so we changed those a lot. And then I would make outfits to help with to hide the body aid because people would stop me and berate me for having you listen to a transistor radio. And I just remember being so shocked that they would yell at me in stores for having you hooked up to a transistor radio. And when they'd get done yelling, I'd calmly say, "This is a hearing aid. My daughter is hearing impaired." And then they'd be embarrassed and walk away.
So Marge would come up and teach you. So at this time, did you even think I would be able to go to a public school? Because deaf kids really were not in public schools at this point.
I never really even thought about it. I was so focused into just you. I never really thought how far away, far-reaching what I was doing was making any difference. I just did as I was told and worked with you and my focus was just on you.
Well, almost every night when you went to bed, she was at your bedside going over phonics with you. And we would correct you if you would say something wrong, if it was a hard CH or a soft CH or SH. And you never took offense to that because you had the desire. You wanted to speak correctly and say the words correctly. And that I think made all the difference in your speech is because, and I call this, you were like a sponge. You just held everything in that you learned. You were so bright. The Lord blessed you with such a bright mind that you were able to comprehend and keep what your mom and everybody was teaching you.
We didn't know you were memorizing every word. And as you began to learn to read, you would memorize every word and sound it out. I remember going with you on a trip and we'd look at signs and you'd say, "Is that road tablets?" And I'd go, "Roadside tables." And road tables, roadside tables, sidey table, tablets. And you'd sound it out and I'd correct you on all the words that you'd see everywhere. And you would memorize every word in your brain. Every word. You were so incredibly smart and gifted.
But that's nice to hear. I think it's amazing the timing that in 1975, President Gerald Ford passed a new law that encouraged public schools to do more to integrate all children with disabilities into public schools. Because up to that point, kids were automatically put in an institution or not given the education that they needed to succeed. And they were given 3 years until 1978 to get that going. Well, being born in 1974, it looks like the groundwork is being laid. And I remember being told that I was one of the very first kids mainstreamed in Wyoming into public schools. Because at that point, kids were automatically sent to Casper to the Wyoming Deaf School. And because that was kind of a new thing, a new law, my understanding is that Marge Doerr, who came up from the Wyoming Deaf School, would teach you, and then you in turn taught teachers.
I did, but did you know we almost put you in the deaf school?
I do. So tell me about that story, because that's a neat story as well. That's kind of a sad story, but it's pretty cool.
Well, we were thinking of moving to Casper, and your dad had an opportunity to go to Casper and be in another bank. And so we went and we looked, and we felt okay about moving there, and we looked at homes, and there weren't a lot of homes to look at, but we found one and decided to put some money down on it. So we put $1,000 down on it, and we left to go home to Worland, and all of a sudden, your dad and I felt this horrible, black, depressing feeling about moving to Casper. It was horrible. It was like black clouds coming in and filling us all with this depression, this horrible, horrible feeling. And we got it at the same time. And we were driving back, and I said, I don't feel good. I don't feel right about doing this to Casper. And he said, I don't either. And because we were going to put you in the deaf school, and we felt okay about that you were starting a new level and that you'd be all right. And it felt wrong. It felt so wrong. So we got home and prayed about it, and the depression lifted. And we knew that it was the wrong thing for us to do, and it was the wrong thing for you. That Worland was the place we were supposed to be, not only for us, but for you. And so the Lord really directed us for you to help you, because Worland was phenomenal helping you with your education. They integrated you in. They prepared every room for you. They gave you the best teachers that would ask for you. The teachers were warned that a hearing impaired student was coming in, and they embraced it. They embraced it. Your first grade teacher, Patsy King, was phenomenal, and she did sign language with the class and with you, and of course you were determined to be the same as everybody else, and you didn't want extra help in the room. You didn't want extra cords around your ears. You wanted just the same as everybody else, and you were adamant. You were adamant. We tried to do different things for you that would help, and Marge would suggest things, and it didn't go over very good in your book.
So you were telling me that I was pretty independent and didn't like to have extra attention, and I completely agree. I remember they would come to my classroom door and be like, Candace, and I would be like, it's time for my speech therapy, and had to leave the rest of my class, and it made me feel different. And I knew I was different, but I wanted to be as normal as possible. So I think that stemmed back from my early childhood years, being 3 and 4 years old and wearing a body aid, which was attached to a harness, kind of looked like a bra with wires coming up to my ears with fitted ear muffs. Now, I do remember, well, I don't really remember specifics, but I have heard about you having people say your daughter looked like she's hooked up to a transistor radio. And anyway,
and you got mad a couple of times at your hearing aids because they would interfere with you playing, and you would throw them away.
Throw them away?
Yes, you did.
Or to take them off?
You would take them off. You'd take them off and put them down, and I don't know how many times we looked out in the yard, all over everywhere, for your hearing aids.
Oh my, I didn't know I did that.
You were pretty active.
I was active.
You were very active.
Well, this body aid, they don't even make them anymore, I don't think. But my understanding is they were very expensive, and it cost $500 for a body aid, which I don't even know what that would be in today's numbers. I'm thinking thousands of dollars in today's comparison.
I'd be 5,000 probably.
And back then, the paycheck, we were just going month to month like everybody else and not putting anything away.
Wasn't the late 1970s kind of a minor depression?
Yes.
Inflation was really high and different things like that. So how did you end up paying for my body aid?
Grandpa Saunders volunteered to pay for your body aid, and we just cried. We just cried that he would do that. But you were so beloved by your family. Oh, your grandma thinks you were sent down just for her.
Which grandma are you talking
Grandma
about?
Saunders, Grandma Doerr,
My mom.
Shirley Doerr. You were. she was so funny. She just adored you, and she would talk straight at you. And every time I would tell her to do anything, she would do that just to you specifically. And I remember going to Denver one time with you and her, and you would sleep in the bed with her, and it was dark, and you wanted to talk. You didn't want to go to sleep, and you'd pat her, and she'd go to sleep, Candace, and we could hear all this, and she would be giggling, and she'd put your hand over by yourself, and you'd pat Grandma again, and I could hear you go, "More, Grandma, tell me a story. Turn to the light." Oh, she was funny. Oh, she cried with every decibel you lost. She was just, I think you were sent to her just as much as to us.
How funny. That's sweet. I think all of my grandparents were amazing. I mean, Grandpa Gerald, Doerr, Grandma Shirley Doerr, and Grandma Joe. Each in their own way just showed such love and acceptance. Even though I had my challenges, they were very, very supportive of me. So, I grew about the age for about 2 years.
2.5 years.
And you had to actually charge it every night.
Yes, in a charger.
A charger. Oh, you found it.
Oh my, talk about memories.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So there's a little red light.
Yep. This is the body ache. Oh my goodness. And here's
The two of them. Pretty used. So,
she had these molds that were fitted to her, had to be changed a lot.
well, something like
As
I
she
took one over
grew.
my head. Like that.
Like that. And that
Yeah.
one was strapped around.
These things right here were strapped right here onto these little hooks. Did that make sense? These little hooks right here. And then these specific ear molds were made to go inside my ears. And if I remember right, there's a little switch.
Yep.
That little switch right here would turn it on and off. And so that's what it looked like. And it's kind of heavy and cumbersome, and I was active. I later on found out I really liked sports and was pretty good at it. So this was in the way when I wanted to play, and this would be heavy on a
It
little
was.
kid.
Oh, well, you would go to school with that.
Yes, and it would look different, and people would be like, "What's that thing?" And I have
Yeah.
vague memories of sitting in preschool with my sons, with the kids there, and they'd be like, "What's that thing? And why do you have those wires up to your ears?" And I'd be like, "I can't hear." And I would just always kind of.
I remember when you were in, I think it was almost first grade, going into kindergarten, going into first grade, and you would always go, "Mom, why do I have to have this problem?" And I'd go, "Well, everybody's got problems. Some people have broken legs, some people have a broken heart that you can't see, and some people have minds that aren't clear." And I would try to explain to you. Then you went to school and you'd walk up and down the hallways and you'd look at your teacher and you go, "What's your problem?"
Yeah. It was a good way for you as a mom to just try to help me feel that everybody had different trials and challenges, and I think that has really affected my outlook in life.
Yes.
That this is a visible challenge that I have, that everybody has challenges just in different ways. So at about, I know I did not go to kindergarten with the body ache.
No.
So right in that time frame, I turned 5 in May and would have started kindergarten in August. So somewhere in there I got a hearing aids, both ears. Do you by chance remember how much those were?
$300 for some reason, $300 each.
That would make more sense. And because I'm growing and active, the earmuffs had to constantly be replaced, and they were constantly squeaking and
Squeaking whenever you smile.
Well, and
air would get in.
they were hard.
Yes.
They were hard, and so they didn't really grow with you. They didn't really transform with you. And it seemed like every set of ear molds cost another $65, $75, another $60, $75 to go back to the doctor and get more ear molds made. So that was a constant. And we would send bills into Primary Children's Hospital, and they would help pay for some of that.
Marchadons?
Marchadons, I meant Marchadons.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because not only do you have the earmuffs that cost money, which were how many, every couple of months?
Oh yeah, and the audiologist.
Yes, and then you also had to pay for hearing aid batteries.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, after the body aid, it was the batteries.
Mm-hmm. I actually remember, I think it was late middle school, early high school years, they had new technology come out with ear molds being made out of like a silicone rubber,
Right.
and they fit so much better and more comfortable and just kind of move with your ear a little bit more, but they used to be hard.
They had
Not
to
really
hurt.
that comfortable. So
No.
I mean, you just deal with it.
They had to have hurt.
Yes.
Oh, and you would stick Q-tips down in your ear so far. You know, we're not used to having anything go into our ears far.
So.
I swear that Q-tip would.
They itched.
Almost pulled it out the other ear.
Yeah, really. Think about it.
Oh.
So I'm about to start kindergarten, and we were living in Sheridan, Wyoming at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not common for a deaf child to be mainstreamed, going to a normal kindergarten program.
And your teacher was not that appreciative of you.
Mrs. Starr was my kindergarten teacher.
Well, your first grade
Yeah, not
teacher
the first
was
grade teacher.
pathetic.
Yeah, she was pretty mean. We can touch on that later. So Mrs. Starr was pretty nice, but what did you have to do to help your child go to school? Did you have to talk to the teacher?
I would go into the schools at the beginning of the year and talk to the teacher about having you in there and about facing the blackboard to where you couldn't read their lips. And I said, she's got to read your lips and see your face. I said, so if you could have a projector and show it this way so you could face forward and have it up this way. So they tried to do that, but they would forget. They would forget all the time. And how you got through school without friends and knowing what they were doing, it got continuously your learning capacity and not being want to be different changed as you went on. So in kindergarten, you started out pretty basic, and then you'd come home and I'd reintegrate what the school were teaching and go over your papers and go over your things with you so that you could keep up with class and understand and read my lips one-on-one. You would read storybooks with us, and I would read the story and you would be over here so you could read my lips while I read the story, and I'd have to turn the pages around to show you. But that's how you love to read on couches and read stories. You love stories and reading. And the teacher, Marge Duval from the deaf school, said deaf people never have more of a vocabulary past 4th grade. And so I wanted everything inside of you to teach you everything you could up to that point, at least.
Mm-hmm. Remember much about those early childhood years? I'm putting you kind of on the spot.
Well, just her working with you every day.
Yes.
You know, it takes a special mom, and she had the advantage of not working during the day.
Yeah.
So she was there when you got home,
Mm-hmm.
when you left, and when you got home, and she could go over the homework with you. And like I said, you were like a sponge.
But your dad rounded everything out by playing with you, romping with you.
Yes.
Oh, my stars. You were his boy.
Yep.
Yes. Well, my kindergarten year, I remember being kind of what you would probably consider a typical kindergarten experience, coloring and cutting and just kind of doing normal kindergarten things. So it wasn't too intensive as far as learning goes. I remember first grade in Sheridan. From August until November, we were in Sheridan, and I had a teacher. She was not a very nice person. And sadly, I do have a memory of not understanding what was going on. She must have given some instruction or something. And I would trying to talk to my friend, being like, kind of like, what are we supposed to do? And she had said, don't talk. But I still didn't know what we were supposed to do, and I remember her hitting me on the head with the ruler. And just being petrified because I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like I could ask a question, and this was legitimately something I could not hear and understand what was going on. So I remember just feeling very timid and insecure, and when I look back as an adult now, I can remember feeling very insecure. And so I think it was an incredible miracle and a blessing, because I think if I would have continued that year, luckily it was only basically 3 months with that teacher who was doing nothing for my confidence in my disability, that we moved. So we moved to the town of Vernon, Wyoming, a population of about 5,000 people. And in Vernon, I remember being nervous because I didn't really like my first grade teacher in Sheridan. And so I remember walking in and meeting my first grade teacher named Mrs. King. And she introduced me to a little girl who happened to live across the street, and somehow she knew that. So I had somebody to walk home with after school, a little girl named Anne. And she was the first friend I ever met. And Mrs. King was so kind, so wonderful. And I just was like, I think I'm going to be okay. And from then on, I had obviously 80% positive experiences with the teachers I had from the rest of the time. Here and there, I did have some struggles. There were some that were good teachers, but I just couldn't read their lips. Anyway, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I do feel that it is very wonderful that we moved to Roland during that time.
It was a blessing.
And another blessing from moving to a smaller town is it's a large enough town where resources are available, but small enough that you are known, that you don't get lost in the shuffle where you might in a big city or something. So living in small town, rural Wyoming, I think did wonders for my personal education. And as you said, you would talk to the teachers before every school year and kind of give them a heads up. But I'm sure, I've never really asked, but I'm sure those teachers talk to each other too.
They did, and the deaf school wanted every classroom to have carpet in the room. I don't know if you ever got that.
I never knew that.
They wanted carpet in every room, and I would talk about things on how to teach you, but they were, the resource people in Worland just were thrilled to have you and welcomed the challenge to make every room available and everything available for you. I mean, like later on in school, they'd give you scripts to read. So if you, I remember you coming home going, I don't know if that was a movie in science about sea life or what it was. And it was diseases or something.
Well, back then they had a lot of film strips.
Yeah,
You're just looking at these pictures.
well, that's true. And the closed captioning wasn't invented yet.
No, it wasn't.
And
So I did have teachers, if there was a script, they would let me read the script. And so once in a while, when there might be a quiz or something of the thing, once in a while they would let those slide for me. But find something else, like maybe have me read another book that was comparable on the information given. And they didn't give me a free ticket at all.
no, I remember Mr. Hammonds. I forgot to go in and talk to him, to all the teachers. I couldn't reach all of them.
Yeah.
And Mr. Hammonds didn't know for 3 weeks that he had a hearing, he knew he had a hearing impaired person, but didn't know who it was.
Really?
Yeah, until I went in after you said that about the science thing, and I said, how would that look if you couldn't hear? What were the pictures on the walls? You know, and he, oh, hello.
That is funny. Well, another key part, I think, of my childhood development was not only having good teachers, and I did have years of speech therapy. So, starting in early preschool, immediately speech therapy, a lot of it, I also had it in the home. My grandparents, both parents, always helping me with my speech. It's also interesting that during the time frame I was an only child. Not by choice, we just were unable to have children. So it was a small tender mercy at the time frame to be able to have my parents' one-on-one attention, which not every child with disabilities has because it took a lot of extra parental effort. But during these early childhood years, was there ever a time when you as parents had to make a decision for me whether I would be strictly lip reading, whether I would be strictly sign language, or would I be a mixture? So I don't know how that came about.
I think if you would have gone to the deaf school, you would have had both, the sign language and the other. And I think that would have made you well-rounded, and you would be able to converse in both worlds. And I think that would have been good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was my fault that you didn't learn sign language, because I think sign language is wonderful. But I was deathly afraid of it. And it was just a mental block. It's not anything's wrong with it. It's a beautiful language. I didn't know that I could handle it because it was just a turn in my mind.
I felt that a lot of it, the decision was made because I was already reading lips, already communicating. I mean, I still had a lot of speech sound to work on. That was pretty understandable, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
Even though I had speech things I need to work on. And so my understanding was that was the main reason why I read lips and I don't do sign language. And I agree with you. I honestly wish today that I knew sign language better. Because every once in a while I'm in a situation where somebody meets me and they can't hear very well and they communicate with sign. I can't communicate very well with them. So I agree with you that I do wish I was more well-rounded. However, living in rural Wyoming, I only knew one kid growing up that also had hearing aids, and he could hear much better than me, and he didn't do sign language. So nobody in the entire town of rural Wyoming, of 5,000 people, did sign language. So kind of living in Wyoming, in my small town, I think almost forced me to have to be more oral, just because there wasn't anybody to communicate with.
I agree.
Perhaps living in a city, you kind of get a pocket of friends and things like that.
Well,
So,
going to Gallaudet really was an eye-opener for all of
So
us.
we went to Gallaudet when I was a sophomore in high school, and we can talk about that later. But Gallaudet is the deaf college for the United States. It's located in Washington, D.C. And that was a very unique experience. So one thing I want to address is as I started progressing through elementary school, about second grade was the first time I started playing sports. And you enrolled me in baseball. There was no t-ball for me, it was baseball. Baseball was the first sport I ever played, and it was all boys. There was only 2 girls in the entire league. And what made you decide to put me in baseball?
You were my son.
And
I taught you how to throw the ball as a boy, not like a girl.
You did.
And I was in baseball,
She was.
and I could throw a mean ball, and we played baseball in high school
Softball.
together, and softball. So Yeah, that's what was available for your age group.
So you just felt comfortable putting me in, even though it was mostly boys?
Yeah, because you were an athlete. You were as much, if not more, of an athlete than the young men were.
You were phenomenal.
Maybe some of them.
Did you have a body aid when you played?
No.
No.
She
No.
was into hearing aids at that time.
Right.
So 2nd grade, I had a hearing aid, but I got my hearing aids in kindergarten, before I started kindergarten. So all of elementary school, everything has been hearing aids ever since. So, what story did you want to tell? I know you're thinking about it.
I don't know how old you were when you were playing center field.
Probably 3rd or 4th grade.
Were you really? Oh my word. So she's playing center field, and they hit the ball out to her, and the young boy runs to second base. And we're behind the batter's box, and Candace is out there challenging that kid to run. She's throwing the ball in the air.
Rather than throwing it in.
Yeah, instead of throwing it in. And she and I have practiced throwing a lot. And so the coach, third base coach, said, "Come on, run." So he goes to third. She's still going like this. I'm in the stands going berserk. Throw the ball. And so third base coach stops him, and she's still going like this, and so he sends him home, and she threw that ball from center
She threw
field
a bullet.
and nailed, and what was phenomenal was the catcher caught it. Caught the ball and tagged him out. That young of age.
Oh, my story.
But I got chewed out after.
Yes, you did. But don't you ever do that again.
So baseball was my first sport.
Yep. PE instructor and said, "Did you see how far Tara threw?" Tara was one of her friends who was kind of a like athlete, kind of. And Coach Burton said, "Oh," and the girl said, "Tara's going to win." And the only thing that the coach said, "Has Candace thrown yet?"
Implying that she's the better
Oh
thrower.
man, she knew.
She did. So we were talking about baseball, and that was the start of playing sports. And over the years, I played baseball first with the boys. Then I started playing softball, both fast pitch and slow pitch. Progressing that, I played soccer for a couple of years until there was no more development for girls. They had to stop at a certain year. I did track, basketball, and volleyball. Mostly things that had to do with the ball I absolutely loved. Now let's talk a little bit about basketball, because in Woolin they had little league basketball, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And you had to teach me a little bit about the game before I even started playing, because I wasn't going to get allowed. Do you remember some of those things that we did?
Yes. I did not coach you your 4th grade
Right.
year, but what?
That's because when you had the ball stolen from you, she took the ball from me.
I had some
Well,
training I needed to do.
The coach you had was okay, but he didn't teach fundamentals. And so I made sure I was your coach your 5th and 6th grade. And so we worked on a lot of defense. And even your daughters, you had me coach them. And it was always, what's the #1 rule of defense?
Stay between the man and the basket,
Okay.
but that depends on the game.
Well, as a little kid,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. But we would have chalk talks after supper. We would sit down. Your mom was doing the dishes, and on a piece of paper, we would go over different aspects of a game, different one each before each game, such as if there's 2 defenders guarding you, what does that mean? You would immediately say somebody's open. Her favorite player in the world was John Stockton, who was a phenomenal passer, and so was she. And so you emulated him,
Always looking.
always looking for the open
for
net.
the open.
So it really helped to have a dad and a mom that understood sports, so that he would work with me in at home, because sometimes when you have a coach in a big gym, he's moving all the way around. It's hard for me to understand. And so I think having that background at home and helping me develop helped me just kind of take it up just a little bit of a notch so that I could play with my peers and beyond. And so I am grateful for that. I will never forget, I did not know this for many, many years. And it wasn't until within the last 5 years you made a very touching statement to me, Dad. And you said your mom worked with you so much with your speech, with your schoolwork and so forth, and I was busy at work. And you thought to yourself, what can I do to help my daughter? Because I'm not able to be there for that particular stuff. And what did you say?
I don't know. Maybe we can do sports.
You could sense at a young age that sports just came naturally for me. And you're like, this is something that I can do as a dad. And if I remember correctly, you said you actually rearranged your work schedule so that you would get home a little bit sooner so that we could play catch in the backyard. We would go and throw a baseball, softball, whatever the sports season was, shoot basket and so forth. And I am so blessed to have two parents that work together. It wasn't all on you and it wasn't all on you, but both of you complemented each other so very well with helping this toddler, this young girl, the teenager develop and grow into the best that they could. So I will always be very, very grateful for that.
Well, we shot baskets several times a week. We'd go up to the church gym and shoot free throws or play around the world from different spots on there. I would guard you and you'd try to drive the ball or something, but I don't know if you're going to get into sports later on, but we had our little sign language. I sat behind the bench and you'd look up and I'd just make one sign. I think that's an L, right?
It's death.
That's what I said. Whatever.
Because down.
I forgot. I had a good friend named Jeff Lee, and he would shoot from the top of the key, and that was a three-pointer. And it was like an automatic layup with him. If you left him alone, it was going in. Well, I would do that to her, telling her, it's open, shoot, because she's always looking for the pass.
What does the L stand for?
Lee layup.
Oh.
Because I called Jeff
It
another
wasn't
Lee
a
layup.
layup. That's just what the guy called it. Nobody would get that
Except us. Lee layup. But then I would go like this. Drive. You know, they've fallen or they're too close to you, you can go around them. And she would do it once or twice, you know, but she would look up and then she'd get so mad at herself for looking up because she knew I was doing some kind of a sign to her that I knew that she could do.
Or when she was at the free throw line, the balls weren't going in, you'd say bend your knees.
Bend the knees or make a rainbow. It'd go like this. She was shooting too flat. And so go like this and they were going in.
It was nice to have somebody that knew my shot and how to fix it and correct it and stuff. But ultimately, all of these experiences in volleyball, basketball, softball, track, all of that helped me develop confidence in myself. And it also gave me a sense of belonging to a team. And when you belong to a team, you develop friendships and experiences like that. So I am very, very grateful for that.
With the hearing aids and with what you're talking about, though, in basketball, that's before they had the little rubber, waterproof sleeves that went over the aids. She would short them out because of the sweat.
And oftentimes you'd play deaf. One flew off when she banged her ear and she called for timeout, and the ref didn't do it, didn't time out. She finally
I
got
kept yelling at him to stop the game because
her hearing aid got lost.
it was a physical game, and it was just a girl had knocked it down, and people were stomping on it, and I knew how expensive they were and stuff, and that's probably the only time I've ever yelled at a ref. And finally they blew the whistle, and I walked over and I picked up my hearing aid and I went to him and I said, if I ever tell you to stop the game, you stop the game. And I turned around and I went,
She did.
and he didn't give me a technical or anything, but I probably deserved it. And so I just threw it up to my mom, and my mom was like, probably trying to pretend she didn't know who I was. But that's one of my bad experiences. But one thing that was fun about basketball is a lot of times coaches will call plays from the sideline, and they couldn't do that with me. So in high school, my coach came up with a flashcard system, different colored papers and different numbers. And so a lot of times I was the point guard, dribbling the ball down, and as I was dribbling down, I would just look over and see whatever play we were running, and I would call them. And we had hand signals and different things. And so my teammates also had to adapt to me and work with me. In volleyball, for example, when there is a hit coming in between two people, you're supposed to call the ball, meaning I'll take it, I'll pass it. And my teammates learned that if I called the ball, I was going to take it. And they might be calling mine, but if I called it, I trump you because I can't hear you calling the ball. And for the most part, I think they just learned to play with me because I had my own just fine. So, fun times.
They accepted that because on the basketball and volleyball team, you were pretty much the number one player on the team.
No.
Yes, you were.
Yeah, that's not true. There was a lot of good athletes.
There were, but
We only saw you.
Yeah. So, anyway. So, in about 4th or 5th grade, I got a machine called a TDD, sometimes called a TTY, telephone typewriter, and you purchase 3 of them. And the way that, I'm just talking about how communication has evolved over the years. I had to have one, and then my friend had to have one, and you put the phone receiver on, and we would type to each other, and my grandma had one. So, how did that come about? How did you learn about that?
I think it was Ben Kapersky that got us on the TTY.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was wonderful.
There wasn't even emailing now. It's been amazing watching my life develop as different technology came about. So I could not talk on the phone, and if I ever wanted to play with friends, did they call the house very often? And you talk to them, or do they always have to come to the door and it was only neighborhood friends?
It was usually only neighborhood friends. Your friends were too embarrassed to call us.
and that's one of the reasons why the sports, you and I were doing sports, because they couldn't call you on the phone. And so they would do their own thing with their other friends. But you had the 2 friends on the street that you played with. But once you got outside that, it's very seldom would maybe the mother would call your mom and see if
Yeah, the mother would.
would
Or
come
we
over.
always let you ask anybody that you wanted from school to come home with you. And that was fine with me.
In early childhood, elementary school, I don't remember saying I wanted to learn how to play the piano. Whose idea was it that I play the piano? I took piano lessons for about 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years.
So whose idea was that, and why would you want your deaf daughter to play the piano?
I don't know.
Wanted you more well-rounded. I don't know.
I think I saw an antique piano and loved it and bought it and thought, let's teach Candace how to play piano.
I never thought about asking why I played the piano, but I did. I took piano lessons, and my parents were not that strict with me. They didn't remind me to practice every day, which you had to do as a child. But as funny as I think that is, there was something that it did do for me. It taught me how to read music, and it taught me how to keep time. And you might think, why didn't I keep going? And I can distinctly remember kind of the time frame why I didn't keep going. It's when I started adding the pedal and playing the chords. I had no idea when to lift the pedal and when to keep my foot on the pedal because it didn't make any difference to me. I could have kept my foot on the pedal the whole time and just kept playing. There were times when I'd be practicing the piano, reading the music, and she would come in and say, Candace, your finger's on the wrong note. And I didn't know I had moved. And I'm still playing. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I could hear the music. I just didn't know it didn't sound good. To me, it always sounded good. So the steps you were.
Here, let's see that. Before we go too much further,
Okay, we're going to backtrack. This is
this
a
is
TTY.
a TTY. Yep.
Yep. So the phone, the old phones that we used to have with the cord that came down, we would put it on, we would turn it on, and we would type to each other, and the word would come across the screen.
You just both would type? Like both of
They-
people would type? Or you would talk and they
No,
would
no.
She's got one, and I've got one. So you're two different. The phone's here, the phone's here. So one would take a turn and type, and it would go across the reader, and then she would answer it. And
You'd
go back and forth.
go at GA.
Go ahead.
It's your turn to type. Then she would type and hit GA, and then that's how we would have our conversation.
Back and forth.
So you never spoke? Because I heard you say
Oh, that was
SKS,
later on.
whatever SK
I'm
is.
glad you brought that up. So this was the way it worked in middle school and high school, and there were only 3 of these. So I had one, and then maybe one close friend would have one, or 2. So we would type to each other, and the words would come across. And this is where I learned how to type pretty fast, and it wouldn't keep up with me, and so I'd have to wait. And then we start typing again, and this is how we communicated. But when I went to college, they developed a relay operator system, and you could call the special number, and you didn't have to have this, but I did. You would talk to the operator and say, please call 307-555-8181. They would call me, and then there would be an operator in the middle, and the operator would type. So kind of like you're the operator. He had the TTY, and she calls the operator, and the operator calls me. And they type everything she says. So she says, hi, this is your mom. I was wondering how you are. He types, hi, this is your mom. I'm wondering how you are. I would type back, I am doing fine. How are you? He would speak, I am doing fine. How are you? And we would just kind of go back and forth. And you had to talk to each other and pretend this person wasn't there, because they typed exactly what you said.
Exactly what you put in.
And they would, if you were to say, tell her this is your mom, the operator would type, tell her this is your mom. They made it literal. And I had amazing relay operators that would say, in parentheses, baby crying in the background, in parentheses, dog barking, in parentheses, the doorbell rang. And you know what? I really appreciated it, because later on, as we started using it more and more, if I was talking to a friend who had a baby and a baby was crying, you guys might get the cue. Maybe this isn't a good time. Maybe we'll need to hang up. Whereas I'd be in my own little world, not knowing that she's struggling to communicate. So when the operator says, baby crying in the background, it was nice to know. It didn't happen a lot, but sometimes some of those little background noises were put in. So that's how that happened. And then the time came, technology advanced even a little bit better, and I would pick up the phone and talk. And I could do that directly to, how do we do it? My mom was the only one that had, my parents were the only ones that had one of these when I went to college. She wanted to hear my voice, so we came up with a system. We left the operator out of the picture. The operator was used only if the person didn't have one of these. And that only came about the time I started college.
You started dating.
Yeah, so that's how I started talking to my husband on the phone through an operator. But my parents had one of these. So what we would do is I would actually pick up the phone and say, "Hi Mom, I played college basketball." I say, "Hi Mom, my game went great," and I would tell her about the game. And then I would put it down, and she would type to me, and I would read what my mom had to say. "I'm so glad to hear you did well. How's school going?" "School going great." "Aww." And then I would put it down, and she would type to me.
That's what I remember.
That's what thing. So that's how we communicated when I went to college with both of you guys. And they could actually hear my voice. So when I was in college, as part of my college basketball team's regimen, we would do extracurricular sports activities. And our team entered a bike race in college, and mountain biking. And so we were in the competition, and I ended up in second place. And I am just busting trying to win. And we came up over the hill towards the end of the race. And I came down this hill, and it was a steep hill, and I'm going fast. When all of a sudden my bike tire hit a little rock that's embedded into the ground, and I flipped head over heels, holding onto the handlebars. Luckily, I was wearing a bike helmet. To show how severe the bike accident was, there was a rock embedded in my bike helmet. And had I not been wearing the helmet, that rock would have been in my head. And I suffered a severe concussion, just really scraped up. And so anyway, they needed to communicate with my parents to get me some medical attention. And that's where she was like, "I need to hear your voice to know if you're okay." So I bet that was a concern for you as I left the college. How are you going to communicate with me? Because I went to college 9 hours away. So I lived in Boone, Wyoming, and chose to go to Snow College in eastern Utah on a basketball scholarship. But it was a 9-hour drive. And I think that would be hard, not knowing how you were going to communicate with your deaf daughter.
It was so hard not having you there to read lips and to communicate with you and hear your voice.
Yes. So we were kind of giggling about me playing the piano. And honestly, I am really glad you had me do it, because it helped me to learn how to read music and to count. And then in the 4th grade, I had kind of expressed some desire to play the drums. I knew at that point they were starting to introduce in music class different instruments, playing the recorder, which is so wonderful and fun for parents to listen to, and introduce different instruments, and in preparation for starting band in the 5th grade. And I don't know why I didn't think, why couldn't I be in band? Why not? I like music in the way that I could hear it. So I expressed a desire to do the drums, because even at that young of an age, I could sense that playing the flute and the clarinet, I could be sharp and flat. People mentioned it all the time, so I was aware that there was sound fluctuation, even though I couldn't hear it. And I said, "Let's do the drums." I remember my teacher, Mr. Lundgren, taught me a year before band started to give me a head start on drumming. We started playing the drums, and I loved it. What did you think about me playing the drums?
Wondering if you could do it. I mean, if you could hear the beat, that sort of stuff.
Hear the beat. I'm the one making the beat.
Well, making the beat.
I was worried you'd bring home a drum set, and I couldn't handle that. But you brought home that rubber plastic hat thing.
It's called a practice pad.
Well, whatever. It was a blessing.
Yes.
So you could play with that.
Yes.
So why not? You did everything else.
Well, I learned from watching the music instructor how to keep time. And I actually keep really good time. And even today, I can tell you a beat comes on and I can feel the beat and I can say that's a 4 time, or that's a 3 time, or whatever. And so that helped me to hear music in a way that I could understand it with the beat. Now, I had an experience in the 6th grade. When you do percussion, which with drums, bell, triangle, bass drum, you play the snare, you play a lot of different instruments within percussion. Well, this particular song, I was chosen to play the bells. And the bells are kind of like piano, and so I was playing it, and my band teacher, I didn't think anything of it. He just kept working with me on it, and he said, "Why don't you come in during recess and we'll work on it some more?" And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And so we practiced this little bell song, but the band was still playing and everything. And anyway, we had our concert, and I played my bells for that one song, and I moved to go on to the next song, and didn't think anything of it. Well, it was about the next day. I was visiting with a friend of mine, an older man, and he said, "I came to your concert last night and you did such a good job on your solo." And I'm like, "I had a solo?" And he said, "Well, yes, when you were playing the bells, you had a solo." "Oh, thank you." I come home and I said to you guys, I said, "Did I have a solo?" And you said, this is my remembrance of it. I said, "Well, yes, we told you did a good job last night." And I was like, "I thought you were just saying that because I didn't know I had a solo. How come nobody ever told me I had a solo?" And at that moment is when I got the butterflies. A solo. But I didn't even know I had a solo, so I just played it to tell you. Do you remember that?
I don't.
I do. You were so shocked.
Nobody bothered to tell me it was a solo, and so anyway.
You did everything perfect in your life. We just went with the flow. Perfect. That's our daughter.
No. So luckily, I had really good teachers and was able to get good grades in school, and so that was never really an issue, was it?
You were in National Honor Society. You were junior class president. You were student body president. You were captain of your teams. You were phenomenal.
One of the things, though, I think growing up with television, since there was not closed captioning until later on in your life, you read books and you loved to read. And so to me, that helped sharpen your mind for when you did get in the upper grades, you were already dedicated to reading and studying because that's how you grew up, not watching television.
That is true. But when the closed captioning did come about, watching the words, I felt like I became a good reader that way.
Your first movie was The Sound of Music, and you watched that every Sunday. Every Sunday you watched The Sound of Music.
Yes, I still haven't memorized it. How funny. But I think closed captioning also helps everybody become a better reader.
They did.
You read and you see how the speech is, how the language is formed.
So much better.
Yeah, so back to when I was a little 2-year-old and you find out I can't hear, to watching me go through all my schooling and so forth. What do you think about all that?
I never thought you'd do as well as you did. Your own determination and your own spirit that you brought with you made you the phenomenal person, a hearing impaired person that you are. And I remember in your blessing, your dad said you would be a joy to all who knew you and a guide. And you have been all of those things. You have been a joy to whoever meets you, always remembers you, and loves you. Everybody. You have so many friends, and you've done phenomenal. I never thought you'd be how good you are in regular life.
I worried later on. You had very few dates because they couldn't call you. And when you did date, they'd ask you in school or something like that, but you were limited on where you could go because movies, you couldn't understand movies or things like that. I always worried about who is out there for you in life to marry you or to marry any person that's hearing impaired that will have the patience that they need to not put up, but to help or and be a partner with that impairment, not disability, but impairment. And so that was always a real inner struggle with me.
I remember
Who she could
fasting
end up
and praying. I remember fasting and praying that a mother was preparing her son to marry you because you were so phenomenal at 8 years old that there needed to be somebody being prepared for you.
That's very kind of you to say that, and I do feel that our faith and our testimony has really helped throughout life because it wasn't always hunky-dory. There was lots of disappointments and discouragement, hard times when I felt very, very lonely. Even though I was part of teams and involved with school, I still felt very lonely. Bus trips were really hard because I could hear my friends talking to each other, but I couldn't be a part of it, and lunchroom conversations and stuff. And so loneliness was a part of my growing up years. But I do feel that you're instilling faith in me that all of us have challenges and trials in life, to just do the best that we can. To keep trusting that this is God's plan, and as we trust in Him, things will work out. It doesn't mean that everything will be all awesome, but we should keep pressing forward. So, thank you for being an amazing parent. I mean, I would not be who I am today without you hanging in there and loving me and encouraging me through the good times and the hard times.
It's been a ride.
That's a good way to put it.